Hello, fellow nerds, geeks, and supporters of indie pop culture creators. Aaron Nabus here, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Holiday Show. On this episode, former high school teacher turned writer, Gabe Cheng, makes his return. He was previously on episode 112, where we discussed his comic book, For Molly. He currently has a Kickstarter campaign going on for his newest comic book, The Problem with Parallels. Welcome back to the show, Gabe.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
And just so that we got the dates for the Kickstarter correct, it's from Wednesday, February 16th, 2022 to, and when does it end again?
March 2nd.
March 2nd.
Also Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's been a while since we had you on. I think about maybe half a year. Before I was had you on for the podcast, I was sort of looking back on just old comic books that I've had, and I came across one of the first comic books I ever owned. It's obviously it's in poor condition, but it
should be.
Yes, it's a Battlestar Galactica tie-in from the TV show back from the 70s.
Okay,
which I got from a 7-Eleven that was in the neighborhood, and it was like issue number 3. So it's like, wow, I'm curious. Do you remember the first comic book that you got and how you felt when you first held it in your hands?
Yeah, it was. I was kind of a late bloomer to comics. So the first ones that really hooked me, I didn't really read until college when I read Watchmen for the first time. But the first comic I ever owned was a graphic novel adaptation of Batman Returns. So I'd seen the movie, and I'd actually been playing the Super Nintendo video game of Batman Returns, and I was, I believe, in a comic book shop, and I picked up that book because it was A, Batman, who I love, and B, something that I felt familiar with and would love to experience in a different way, because I'd seen the movie, but this was it would have been at the time when I probably saw it on VHS, but I don't think I owned it, and it was pre-internet, so it wasn't like I could just click a button and order a poster or
right
or click another button and order an action figure. It was like, okay, here's this thing that I like that I'm really starting to get into. This Batman Returns was kind of my entry point into Batman, period. So that I kind of gravitated to that, and I always loved it. I read it multiple times, and it always fascinated me that the book was slightly different from the movie, because I think that they're kind of done off of shooting scripts, and then things change in the editing process of a movie, and they're kind of the creation of those two things. They're running parallel to each other, and so that always fascinated me, and that's one thing I remember is that it was different from the movie. I don't remember what the differences are, if that was going to be your follow-up question.
Oh, no.
So sorry about that. But yeah, that was my first comic that kind of hooked me as a kid, and then I wasn't super I wasn't kind of brought into comics when I was younger. I didn't know anybody else that was into comics. I didn't have anybody in my age group or in my family that was like, hey, here's the thing you might like. Do you want to, are you interested in it? Do you want to, you want to start a pull bag or, a pull list, and we'll go to a comic book shop every week and we'll talk about it and stuff like that. Nobody ever really brought me into it. So it really wasn't until college that I started reading, as I said, Watchmen, and then Long Halloween, and then a couple of other Batman titles that it was like, oh, okay, this is a real thing for me, and this is something that I'm going to start to be more serious about as a consumer and as a collector.
Right, and I think I sort of mirror that. That I didn't really have anybody around me that showed me my first initial comic,
Yeah.
it was it was purely based off the TV show. If had I not watched Battlestar Galactica and then randomly walked into that 7-Eleven and saw that Battlestar Galactica comic book, on the in the rack, I probably would have never. Who knows what my journey toward comic books might have been. So
Yeah.
likely, same with you with the video game and its association with the comic book. It's like, it's interesting that it's sort of like that. And I usually we start with an origin story and an intro, but since you've already been on the show, I guess we'll sort of forego that. I mean, our audience who have listened to the previous episode than you, they know that you grew up in New Jersey. You grew up and you were
Mhm.
born in Baltimore,
Mhm.
and that you made your way out here to LA and the West Coast. And you were a high school teacher and then a writer. But I guess the reason why I start off with sort of talking about the first comic book that we both got, sort of. That the first comic book that we read, because for me it was sort of like a tie-in, and it's sort of similar to you, and it's sort of going to be part of a question that I ask in the Thunder Round, which
All
I
right.
guess we'll go ahead and start right now because you've already been on the show. So I guess my first question will be, we talked about this last time, and when you were on the show, and you answered that in an alternate version of you in another universe, you would have continued and become a college football player.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about your new book, The Problem with Parallels, what are some other possible alternate versions of yourself? What do you think they're doing right now?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, just as a refresher, this is the one I do think of most often. That after high school, I decided not to pursue playing football in college. I didn't know coming out to the West Coast in New Jersey, the community colleges didn't have football teams. So I didn't know that was even an option coming out to the West Coast. So that would have been something that I had explored maybe if I had known about it. But it's impossible to know at this point because it didn't happen. I think that another thing that I would have tried to do was try to coach football a little bit more. There was, when I was teaching high school, I had the opportunity to do that for 1 year. And then the head coach that I was working with got fired because there's two types of football coaches: those that got fired and those that are about to get fired. So the rest of the staff was unceremoniously dismissed as well when the new guy came in. And I think that I would have liked to coach for another year. It probably wouldn't have been as fun under that new guy who is a little bit more I guess less fun. But I would have liked to have that experience for a little bit longer. That's another thing that I think about as far as parallel universes, a split off of things like that. Yeah, I think that there's definitely a version of me that didn't quit teaching, that is still doing it, and that is that maybe found a way to love it again, or had a particularly hard time with all of the remote learning that's going on right now. I definitely don't envy my former colleagues who are really working their asses off. If I can use that word on your podcast here.
No problem. We're listed as explicit, so
Okay, good. Yeah, I knew a lot of really great teachers that are working very, very hard right now, and I see that, and I just don't. I don't know if I would have had the fortitude to continue doing it, knowing that I stopped doing it 6 years ago or 5 years ago now. So yeah, I think that there's another version of me that's still teaching, and yeah, I'm trying to think of a more fun one. Those are kind of dry.
do you remember what subject did you teach?
I taught video production, art, graphic design,
Oh, nice.
and yearbook. Yeah.
I wish I learned about graphic design in high school. Otherwise, I would have become a graphic designer sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm completely self-taught in graphic design. I wish that I had that opportunity as well. I saw kids that were my classmates that were in the graphic design class at my high school, and I was so jealous because I wasn't even aware that class was like existed.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw them manipulating things in Photoshop, and this is like 2002 version of Photoshop, and I was like blown away, like, oh my god, that's amazing.
2002. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think another thing that I had thought about doing in college was transferring to a different college. And I ended up not doing it because A, it was too much work, and B, I had a lot of really good friends, and I was in a fraternity in college, and so I made the decision to stay. But I wonder, what the parallel version of Gabe is like that decided to transfer between sophomore and junior year of college, and where I would have ended up if I'd even ended up somewhere, and what my experience would have been like. I probably still would have been in Southern California. I don't know about if I'd continued what career I would have pursued. Maybe I wouldn't have gone into teaching. But yeah, I think that that's another different parallel universe of me. If we're just playing the anything goes game, I would say that, yeah, I'd probably be in a different career. I probably would have tried to start my career in entertainment a little bit earlier, maybe start my my writing journey a little bit earlier. But yeah, I think that that's about it.
So, for all intents and purposes, for this version, for this universe's version of you, it was pretty much LA or bust.
Yeah, I think that no matter what version of me we're talking about in any other parallel universe, I think that is something that I wanted to get out of Jersey. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with it, except that it's not the capital of the or the hub of the entertainment industry in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I really have always wanted to work in entertainment, and I stepped away from that for a number of years while I was teaching. But even still, I was like, as I said, I was teaching video production. I was teaching about movies, and I was teaching kids how to make their own little movies and things like that, and editing and storytelling and all those things. So it's always been a part of my life. But after 7 years of teaching, one of the reasons why I left was like, okay, I don't want to be in the education role of this anymore. I want to try to do it for myself. And I've gotten to that point now where I'm finally in the job where that, the job that I found I feel like is perfect for me. And it's perfect for the experience that I had teaching, that I wouldn't have necessarily fit into this role had I not had that experience, is what I mean. So, I think no matter what, that would always have been my ambition and my goal is to get to essentially where I am now, working in the entertainment industry and making a career out of it, so that I can be doing this for a very long time and doing it in a way where I can, start a family and support myself in that way and blah, blah, blah. So
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we talked a little bit before the podcast started, and you're working for a company that they make movie trailers. I mean, are there any movie trailers that are coming out that you can sort of talk about, that you can talk about?
Unfortunately, I can't.
Okay.
I've signed an NDA, and I can't talk about it. But yeah, but to fill it in a little bit more, as I said, I taught video production. I was teaching kids how to edit, and now I work with editors that make movie trailers and TV spots, and so I love it. I love it. I absolutely love what I do. And as I said, I don't think I'd be able to get there if I hadn't had that experience in high school teaching.
Yeah, I remember. And when I was in graphic design school, one of the classes that we were able to take was a video editing class. And one of the projects was to make a movie trailer, and I chose Braveheart. So that was a fun project.
Yeah. There's a lot in there. When I was in high school, why do I keep premising with I used to be a high school teacher? I think that hopefully your audience has figured that out by now from everything I said. So one of the I used to do a project that was movie trailers, and the problem is it's kind of hard to engineer a movie trailer with just like go out and shoot it with the intention of creating it into a movie trailer, as opposed to taking something that already exists and then cutting it down, right? Like you're saying with your Braveheart example. So there's a part of me in the back of my head that is always still thinking of a project structure and lesson plans for if I were to go back and be a teacher, which I don't plan on doing. But I used to do this thing with my graphic design students where I would have so if you, Aaron, were in period 3 design class with Mr. Cheng, for one of the graphic design projects, you would get a you would get a job, a contract, a description of something that a client wanted from a client that was another student in period 5.
Ah,
So it'd
interesting.
be something, and it would go the other way as well. So you would come up with your own thing that you wanted a graphic designer to create. That would go to period 5, and somebody else would work on it there. So you're not working on your own thing. So it got kids used to doing like the idea of like in graphic design, if you're going to do it as a career, what you're going to do is work for a client, very likely.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, if I were to go back and redo my movie trailers project, it would be, all right, go out and create a little 5-minute or 3-minute video, or maybe just clips of videos, and then we're going to put those all together into a server, or you're going to, and then we'll all get to make a movie trailer from just that. Or it will be like, okay, this group is making this 3-minute video, and then that will go to a completely different group in a completely different class, and then they have to make a trailer from it. So something like that is how I would do a trailer project. I'm sure this is very interesting. I hope it's very interesting to everybody that's listening, but that was just my kind of stream of consciousness.
I think so. I mean, especially today, we have the technology in our pockets to make really good trailers and movies. I mean, smartphones have come a long way. Shout out to my friend Susie Botello. She's the founder of the International Mobile Film Festival, and she's been showcasing movies that have been made on smartphones from around the world for over a decade now. So
I know that stuff is amazing. That's so cool.
My next question is, what the heck is a Philly taco?
What the heck is a Philly taco? It's delicious is what it is, number one. So it's on my Instagram. My brother went to school at Penn, which is in Philadelphia. So we will make trips back there to go to Eagles games every other fall. The other years we're going to Philadelphia. We're going to Baltimore to Ravens games because I'm a diehard Ravens fan. But a Philly taco is you go to South Street, and there is a pizza place across the street from a Philly cheesesteak place. And what you do is you take this giant piece of pizza, which is probably 2 or 3 times the size of what we think of as being a normal piece of pizza, and you put the cheesesteak into the pizza slice, and you wrap it up like a taco. And then you eat it together. It sounds crazy, but it is honestly delicious. Like it's a lot of bread, first of all, but it's also a lot of cheese, which is delicious. It's the red sauce mixing with the I think they use prime rib. I'm probably wrong about that, but it's mixing with the beef that's freshly made for the cheesesteak, and it's just amazing. It was so much fun to eat. I was there with my brother when we ate it, and I think he ate his whole one, or he might have left a little bit. But I definitely ate all of mine and probably could have gone more. I don't do as many of those food challenges anymore like I used to.
Oh wow!
But
what,
yeah,
what other food challenges have you done?
When we were in high school, we used to challenge each other to eat like a bunch of Philly cheesesteaks in one sitting, and then we had a place that was by my high school that you could get it with. There's the chicken ranch ones, which I was never a huge fan of, but like you could get it with a fried egg, you can get it with mozzarella sticks inside. When I was in college, we used to go to Hometown Buffet and see who could eat the most plates.
How many plates did you go? I think I did 6 or 7.
I think I've done 7 or 8, but I had a friend that did 9 or 10. I know that I came in second. We also used to go to local Mexican places and just get like breakfast burritos and carne asada fries, and just like that wasn't so much a contest as just being gluttonous in general. But things like that, we would challenge each other to do stupid things like that. Definitely the Hometown Buffet is something that I probably wouldn't do again. I probably don't have the intestines for it anymore, but it was something that that I'm not too proud to mention onto a podcast, is for sure.
Well, I think they're disappearing. The local ones near me, I think they're pretty much all gone.
I believe so, and I know that that Sioux Plantation is gone as well. So, and my brother, we went to Sioux Plantation fairly frequently when we were growing up, and my brother apparently hated it. So he sent like me a bunch of text messages that like, oh, I'm so glad this place, this place shouldn't have existed still anymore, and blah blah blah. I was like, it wasn't that bad. I mean, like, I never had a problem with it.
Has your brother come to visit you in LA?
Yeah, not recently. He lives in the Pacific Northwest, and he's kind of doing his own thing. But like, but yeah, he's come to visit me in LA. But like, we've stayed connected because we've done a podcast together for the last couple of years. We
did the Futurama one.
Yes,
Okay.
our Futurama podcast, Another Lousy Millennium, which ended last year because we went through every single episode and all the movies, and we did some wrap up podcasts and made some lists of our favorites and things like that. But just this week, I'm not sure when this podcast is coming out, but just this week, Futurama's coming back. Got announced that Hulu is picking it up for another 20 episodes, and it's going to start to be created, and it's going to be posted or dropped or aired or whatever, however we say, for the streaming services in 2023, and that means that Luke and I, my brother, haven't discussed what it means necessarily for especially what we're going to do in the interim, but Another Lousy Millennium is going to come back, and we're going to talk about those new episodes.
Nice.
So yeah, that's so he's going to be forced to talk to me at least through 2023.
Nice. The only reason I ask is if your brother ever visited you in LA is because of all the wealth of Korean barbecue places that are there.
Oh, so yeah.
I'm sure you guys have maybe some challenges going on.
Yeah, I actually don't think that we have. When I visit him, we do hot pot.
Oh, got it.
So it's a different kind of all you can eat. But yeah, it's been. I think, yeah, it was hot pot the last couple of times that I visited him. But yeah, the next time he visits me, like, it's definitely got to be Korean barbecue, because I definitely love that. And any place that says all you can eat, that's a challenge I'm always willing to take up.
Yeah, hot pot must be really nice up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, we've actually we've done it in San Francisco because he used to live there.
Okay,
and it is really great in San Francisco.
Yeah, nice weather for it, for sure.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you're a huge Baltimore Ravens fan. I used to be a San Diego Chargers fan, being from San Diego. But
right.
Since they left for LA, I am without a team.
Oh, okay.
Why should I switch to the Ravens?
I think that it's definitely hard to answer that question because we did have kind of a lousy season. Yeah. I think that we're going to bounce back next year. I think that Lamar Jackson is not only a good quarterback on the field, but I think that he's a good character guy. He is the kind of guy that has the right positive attitude and work ethic and just general leadership qualities that I'm proud to be a fan of the team that he is on. I am very I'm happy that he's our quarterback and that he is hopefully going to be our quarterback for a very long time, knock on wood. And I think that that can be said for a lot of the guys on our team, that the head office does a really good job of not only getting people that are skilled on the field, but are high character guys that are Ravens through and through. Just off the top of my head, Mark Andrews, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley, all these guys. And also not just the ones currently on the team, but guys going back, to in the 20 years that I've been a fan. Like, I really feel like we do a good job of getting and keeping guys with good character. Yes. We had issues with the whole Ray Rice thing, which I,
Right.
I have many thoughts about how that was poorly handled by not just the Ravens, but by the NFL. But, over the course of the history of the team, I think that we are a very well run, very good to the players, good to the fans type of organization. A team that is definitely one that has always fielded a competitive team. We've had a couple of bad years like the one that just happened, but Teams that are generally pretty exciting to watch, are generally still in the hunt of things, are putting themselves in the position to win football games. I think that's the Baltimore Ravens as I've seen them over the last 20 years. And I think that what I witnessed this year was a team that was decimated by injuries, that had a lot of our starters couldn't even take the field in the regular season. They were, 3 major injuries in training camp, and there was a lot going against us, and we were going up against very, very good teams toward the end of the year, but they just did not quit. They kept fighting. They kept playing every single game. They played hard to the best of their abilities, and they left it all on the field. And I think that speaks well to the type of people that we have on the team, and also our head coach, John Harbaugh, who gets them prepared for to go out there, because he's just a character guy. He's the type of guy that is going to give his all and is going to encourage people to give their all. And that is just, it makes you proud to be a fan. It makes me proud to be a fan. And on top of that, I think that M&T Bank, which is the home stadium, I think it's a beautiful stadium. I think that they've done recent renovations on it that make it a really great experience. And I love going there personally. It's right in the heart of Baltimore, in the Inner Harbor. It's a great environment, family friendly, and just going there. I try to go every other year. It's just so thrilling to be around that many people that love something as much as you do, and it's amazing to be a part of that. And I'm very proud to be a Ravens fan. I wear my colors very proudly, and it's a community that I'm happy to be a part of as well.
Nice. I think, I don't know, you're making a good case. I who knows? I definitely want to go to Baltimore and watch a Ravens game for sure.
It's definitely a worthwhile experience. I think that, I haven't been to all of the stadiums, but I think that M&T Bank is a pretty special stadium. I think it's got the elements that make it very classic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got a lot of renovations and stuff that make it very new, and like they've got really great screens and jumbotrons and stuff like that, and and it doesn't feel old, despite the fact that it is almost 20 years old, if not 20 years old. I think that like in the next 2 years, it's going to turn 20. So it's not going to feel like AT&T in Dallas or wherever that is in Texas, or SoFi in LA, because those are new and cutting edge and stuff like that. But there's something to be said about going into a football stadium and feeling like it's a classic football stadium,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I love it.
Nice. I've always, all the Ravens fans I've ever met, they've been really cool, and they're really like you. They're really loyal to the team. So
yeah, I've met some crazy ones.
Oh, really?
but for sure they're loyal to the team. Yeah.
Another thing I want to check on Baltimore. I want to get some legit crab cakes.
Yeah, it's the place to do it. The last time I was there, we were only there for the day to go to the game, because I was in Washington with my girlfriend. But yeah, we've gone out to Fells Point, my brother and I, and gotten crab cakes and mussels and all kinds of seafood and stuff. It's great. Yeah,
nice. It's definitely on my list of places to visit. So, what's a music album, TV show, movie, and book would give our audience a good sense of who you are?
Music album. I'm not much of a music guy, so that's kind of a hard one. And I'm totally blanking on the name of like the Rise Against album that I'm thinking of. But yeah, that gives you kind of a good sense of definitely what I listen to when I'm working out. And the kind of music that I like. I'm not sure if it gives you a sense of me as a person. I was actually thinking of, and God, I'm so bad at music trivia and stuff, but the band Social Distortion was kind of like the soundtrack to my last 2 years of college. Mm-hmm. And that kind of Southern California rockabilly punk rock, however you want to classify it. Like that would probably give you a better idea of kind of my personality. TV show, the aforementioned Futurama, definitely. It is something that has been very important to me. Not just in, my watching and in my enjoyment of it, but I've now dedicated years to doing a podcast with it. It has been the defining element of my relationship, my adult relationship with my brother. And as a close second to that, or even probably tied for first with that, would be The Simpsons,
right.
Which is so influential on me. The way that I talk, the things that I think that are funny, the jokes that I put into my comic of trying to, if I put a joke in there and
right.
I'm like, is this a Simpsons joke? Am I stealing this, or is this an homage?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Before you go on, I think I remember in our last podcast you mentioned that I think there's a few times that whenever your girlfriend catches you laughing or whatever,
100%.
Yeah, you're probably thinking of a Simpsons joke or an episode.
Yeah. It is. It baffles people around me, where I will start laughing to myself, and my girlfriend knows, and my best friend knows as well, that it's most likely a Simpsons joke that I'm thinking of in the moment, or it's a Futurama joke. Like we were talking about. We were talking about at work the hot sauces and the episode of the Futurama. It's in Spanish, so I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's like I don't even remember what the words are in Spanish, but it's like the mysterious journey of Homer in Spanish is the name of the episode, where he goes on the spirit quest because he eats the hot peppers, the peppers of Quetzalcoatlanga, grown in the jungle primeval by the inmates of a Guatemalan insane asylum. And so I was thinking to myself, like, find your soulmate, Homer. Where? I'm just your memory. I can't give you any new information. That joke popped into my head while we were talking about it, and I just started laughing to myself. So it happens fairly regularly.
I guess it's El Viaje Misterioso de Nuestro Homer.
That's it exactly. Thank you very much. And movie, that's a tough one. I would say, so some of my favorite movies I feel like do kind of reflect on me as a person. The Dark Knight, Clerks 2, Clerks 1 and Clerks 2, and also The Empire Strikes Back. But if I was to kind of pinpoint onto one thing, Clerks 2 is all about feeling dissatisfied with kind of where you are in your life, and feeling stuck, feeling like nothing's going to change, and kind of going with the flow when things seem convenient, and okay, this seems like what I'm supposed to be doing now in my 30s, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of where those two characters are in Clerks 2, and not just going with the flow. And they break that kind of by not just going with the flow and doing something about it and changing something and coming to the realization that you need to change something about your life in order for you to be truly happy. So I think that that's something that defines the last couple of years of my life, and also are a big element of the problem with parallels.
Nice tie in there.
Thank you.
And the book?
The book. Oh, right. Let me think. Right now I'm making my way through the Expanse series.
Oh, I've been meaning to tackle that.
Well worth it. It's 9 books, and they're each about 400, 500 pages. So it's a time commitment, but it is well worth it. I don't think that those are like my life, really.
Right.
But that's the first thing that came to mind.
Do you have a favorite character from The Expanse? I mean, I've only watched the show, so I have a favorite, but
I think that from the show, my favorite character is Amos.
Oh yeah, he's good.
I love stoic characters. I love characters that are very much just like get it done, find a way to get things done. I think that like Naomi is that way too, where there's always a solution. It's just a matter of giving her the opportunity to think about it and sometimes having to make the hard sacrifice in there. I think the best character in the show is probably Kamina Drummer, though. I mean,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that she's probably the most complex character. She's the most unique character. She's the one that is, kind of definitely like the coolest, she's got the coolest look. She's got the coolest way that she talks, and she's, she's belter through and through and all that stuff. So I think that, yeah, so I love those three characters on that show.
I miss having Miller on the show though.
I do too. And I was so excited when he came back as a ghost, and I was like, oh, I hope this lasts forever. Yeah, I really loved Miller as a character. I thought that his for the same reasons for Kamina, he was so cool, even though he was kind of washed up, and nobody trusted him, and they put him on the Clarissa Mao, not Clarissa, the other Mao sister. I can't remember her first name.
Yeah.
Like they put him on that job because they kind of knew that they kind of anticipated he would screw it up or just kind of go by the numbers and, just be lazy. But he managed to get it done and managed to kind of turn his life around at the end. And I don't know. He had cool look and a cool sound. And, he was very strong willed, even though he was wrong about things.
Right.
He believed in himself yeah, he was a very cool character.
It was Julie Mao.
Julie Mao, yes, thank you.
Thanks to the power of the internet.
Yeah, thank you for fact checking all of my half facts here. Yeah, so book. Oh man, I mean, my favorite book is American Gods. That's the kind of thing by Neil Gaiman that I strive to live up to that kind of kind of
I need
thing.
To read that. I got it as a Christmas present one year. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, another one that's well worth it. It's definitely a world that I love to inhabit. The TV show is pretty good. It didn't, the man was involved with it himself, Neil Gaiman. He was an executive producer, and I think that he showrun the second season. But I think that there's something very special about that book and the way that those characters kind of interact in the book. I'm having a hard time thinking of a book. I guess I would go with American Gods and how it's about coming into. I love that it's the hero's journey in a way where it's coming into a particular world that is new and special, and then interacting with it and adapting to it. But it's also like, it's not the typical hero where Shadow is a very quiet and reserved character, which I sometimes tend to be very introverted, and very, very sad too, because it starts with this amazing tragedy that happens to him in the first couple of pages, and then his life kind of spirals and for a little bit in the beginning there. And so I don't know. I think as far as connecting with that character, for sure. And the journey that he goes on going into the special world. And so I love that journey. But also I think that, as I said, I just love Neil Gaiman, everything he does. And, I strive to be even a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the storyteller that he is. So yeah.
Cool. What's your kryptonite?
Sugar.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I have a really bad sweet tooth. So yeah, sugar. It will be, if I'm ever fighting in a situation where I'm fighting Lex Luthor and I'm like really like I'm using my laser eyes and my super strength to really get him into a corner. If he pulls out a box of donuts and like, oh, okay, well, this is what I'm doing for the next 10 minutes, just eating all these donuts.
I'd go for a donut right now.
Yeah. Donuts and people that talk in movies. People that talk during movies. That's something that I cannot abide. So that's my kryptonite.
Have you gone to a movie theater recently?
Yeah, I went to see I went to see Nightmare Alley in a theater, and I think that was the last one I saw in the theater. Because I saw SpiderMan before that, and they came out in the same weekend. So yeah, that would have been the last one that I've been to. So,
how are the crowds there?
It was fine. The Nightmare Alley theater wasn't crowded, which is kind of a tragedy, because that movie definitely deserved to be seen, and it was definitely a cool viewing experience. I I saw SpiderMan in a smaller theater. It wasn't as crowded, but the the it was. I was hoping for the experience that, the experience that people had watching Avengers Endgame, where everybody started cheering when certain things happened. I don't want to spoil it in case people haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Yeah. I was hoping for like a crowd that was going to be cheering and stuff, but at the same time, there were some teenagers behind me when I saw Spider-Man, and I didn't want them to start like talking during it because, as I said, that's awful like to me.
Right.
So I was not like jumping up and cheering when things happened in Spider-Man that I was excited about, like when a particular character showed up in the first act of the movie and is talking to Peter in his living room. He's my favorite Marvel character, so I wanted to cheer, but I didn't. But overall, the crowd that I was with was good, and it was actually kind of cute. There was a family behind me with a little girl, and there was and like she kept like bringing up little Spider-Man trivia whenever something was mentioned, like whenever an Easter egg was mentioned. Like the one I remember was the Green Goblin said like, "Oh yeah, I had a son once," and the little girl, I could hear her like leaning over to her parent being like, "Harry." And I was like, "Ah, oh, that's cute." Like if it was like constant, like somebody like having a continuous conversation, I would have been very angry. But like the fact that she was like so young and pointing out all the little Easter eggs and Spider-Man trivia, I thought was very cute.
My next question is sort of the question I was sort of alluding to when we first started the podcast, but there seems to be a massive disconnect when it comes to the big two, meaning Marvel and DC, when sort of looking at their box office revenue and the revenue from their respective comic books. What do you think could be done to better bridge the gap? And when we first talked about it at the beginning, it was sort of like the tie-ins that got us sort of, involved in their ecosystem. What are there any things off the top of your head that can be done to better increase the sales of the comic books?
Do you mean like to better increase sales of comic books?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Since they're having success with their movies, but it doesn't seem to be translating to.
Yeah. I see what you mean. I don't know because I don't know how people consume comics anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think it varies so much with so many people. I don't know if they should be putting all their energy into digital comics. I don't know if they should be putting all their energy into print comics. I don't know if it's a new media thing where like in order to hook younger kids, at the age when we first picked up our first comic book, that it needs to be some sort of motion thing that's made for a mobile device or a tablet. I think that's really the golden question is how are people reading comics? How are people buying comics in order to, and where can the big companies, how can the big companies exploit that information in order to get more people to read it? Everybody I talk to, like, I feel like has their own unique way of buying, consuming, reading comics. I mean, me personally, the only real print comics that I read are the ones that I buy off of Kickstarter because I'm supporting my friends, or just finding cool stuff on there. Practically everything else I read is digital and it's on Hoopla. So, is it, and somebody else over here is reading Marvel Unlimited. Somebody else over here is reading Comixology, or they're going to the library, they're going to Barnes and Noble if they still have that deal with DC, they're going to their local comic book shop, they're going to conventions, they're going to Kickstarter. Like there's just so many different ways to get it and so many different ways to read it. Like I don't know if there's an answer to how to get more people to read it. I think that, I don't think that for one thing is for certain is that I don't think that there is a dearth of creative content out there, of great writers, of great artists, of people that are telling unique, timely stories. I think that I'm not in love with the big stunts, like let's kill Superman, and
Oh,
and like
let's
that'll be the
restart the
big
whole universe again.
yeah, let's restart the New 52, which there was a lot of good stuff in the New 52. But yeah, so the big things like that, I don't know that that's gonna be what draws people in anymore. I think it'll definitely draw the collectors in and the people that are dedicated to it, because I think that that's what happens, but I might be wrong. So I don't know. Sorry, I don't have an answer,
Oh
but
no, no, no. I was
yeah,
just wondering if you had any thoughts to sort of move that discussion in a certain direction.
I think I think it's very cool that that unique creator owned stories are becoming more popular. And I hope that that's going to be a lot of people's entry points into comics in general. Maybe that will get them over to the big two. But I think that it's just very cool that um, Matt Kint and Keanu Reeves did Berserker is the first one that comes to mind.
Right.
And Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire are on Kickstarter as well, doing their own stuff. Just the creator owned comics. I think that, despite all the issues that I raised about all the different avenues and ways of getting comics, the fact that all those avenues and ways of getting comics have given the opportunity for more creators to create their own stuff, not just Batman and Superman and sorry for the ambulance. Sorry
No
about that.
worries.
Apologies to all your listeners. I think that that's very cool, and I think that, and I hope that will be the entryway for a lot of people in comics and people that just go on Kickstarter and find things. That's an experience that is within the last 10 years. That's not how you and I found comics. It was all print medium. But I hope that that's something that continues.
Mm-hmm. Cool. If you could teleport to anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why did you pick this place?
That's a good question. I think that I've only been to my knee jerk reaction is that I've only been to Italy once. I'm half Italian, and I would love to go back. So I'd say Florence, Italy. The added benefit, I've been to Florence once, and it was for a very short trip, and I would love to go back and be there for a longer time. The added benefit is that my artist, Lisa Menegel, who did the art for Problem with Parallels, lives in Florence.
Oh, wow.
And I've never met her in person. I talked to her on the phone once. Our communications, other than that, are through email, and I think that she's an amazing artist, and I think that'd be incredible to meet her in person. I've never been to Ireland. I'd love to go to Ireland, Scotland, and a couple of other places. But no, I think that for the most part, I'm very happy living in LA. With the people that I have around me, my friends and my girlfriend and my family that live here as well. I wish that my other family members lived closer. I have family in New York and my brother's in the Pacific Northwest. But for the most part, I like where I am. I like what I'm doing, and I like being here. There's places I'd like to travel, but certainly I like being here.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think San Diego will always be home base for me, but I could live somewhere else for maybe a month, or two. But I'd always return to Southern California.
Yeah. Where would you go?
Oh gosh, I've always wanted to go to Japan. I've only been to the airport. I mean, growing up a fan of anime and manga. Japan has always held a special place in my heart. And I mean, after a good hard day's work, I mean, I always look forward to a cold Sapporo. So
yeah, yeah. Why do I want to say ramen? Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
ramen's
warm
good.
ramen. I was thinking, yeah. I don't know what's wrong with me.
I love Japanese food. It's basically, anywhere where I can discover, awesome food. Those are places I want to go to. I mean, that's one reason why I miss Anthony Bourdain and his show, because it just
100%.
opened my mind to all these different places that, wow, I want to go there someday.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about a lot of different places. I've always heard that Japan is like, it's such a totally different culture from the West, that it's just such a great destination to travel and just to experience,
Hmm.
because it is, we're all one species on one planet, but like the fact that it could be so different across the ocean is just an amazing kind of perspective shift.
Definitely. And my cousin, he was stationed in Spain, and I always wanted to go to Spain. So, and I know, going back to Anthony Bourdain, I know Spain uh, had a special place in his heart as well. So,
Right,
I'm
right,
always
right.
interested in those type of places. Now I'm getting hungry. Um, what's more important, originality or giving readers an audience, or giving readers and an audience what they want?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say originality. Um, I think that giving readers what they want, what readers want, what I as a reader want, what I as an audience want, is a good story, well crafted, with good characters that that feel unique, that I feel like are well rounded. Um, and so I think that for me personally, the way that I do that, the way that I create a book that I myself would want to read as a comic book reader, is by trying to come up with my own stuff, trying to be original, trying to be unique. And that's kind of one of the part of the challenge that I have laid out for myself with the projects that I'm working on now and ones that are coming up, and the problem with parallels and things like that. Um, I think that, in the larger, grander scheme of pop culture, I think that it is interesting that, the whole giving the audience what they want thing, because I think that has happened a lot with a lot of the Star Wars properties that have come out. It's starting to happen with some of the Marvel stuff that's coming out. Um, it just feels a little bit too much like, hey, uh, you love The Empire Strikes Back, right? Well, here it is in a TV show form, like, not to get too specific into what I'm talking about, in case that's a spoiler for anybody. But, I think that for me personally, it's very important for me to be original right now.
Right.
And I think that I can give the readers what they want, um, and be original, because what the readers want is a great story, great characters, well-rounded characters, blah, 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 like I said. And I want to create a story that I myself would want to read.
Definitely. Um, Being a John Cho fan, what did you think of the Netflix live action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop?
I thought that he was very cool.
Hmm.
I thought that, he definitely, he was a version of Spike that I thought was very cool. He didn't seem like he was just trying to be Spike from the anime,
Right.
which I appreciated. But I think that overall, the show, and one of the reasons why it probably wasn't renewed, was that, in my personal opinion, is that it didn't quite separate itself from the anime enough.
Hmm.
And it was relying a little bit too much on certain things in the anime, and not the ones that I was hoping to look for. Like, one of the things that I love about Cowboy Bebop, and I haven't watched a lot of anime, but I do love Cowboy Bebop, is that it wasn't afraid to do things that were a little bit out there. Like the episode where they spend like practically half of it just like crawling through the wreckage of a mall looking for a VHS player, right?
Hmm.
I love that it also played around with genres. There's an episode that's just a horror film. There's an episode that's a Western, literally with a cowboy riding a horse. There's an episode where it's just about Ed and it's a comedy, or it's just about Faye and it's a romance, or things like that. It wasn't scared to play with that, where um, the live action show didn't really attempt that, which I thought was kind of a missed opportunity, and I wish that they had done that. I thought that the action was pretty good. I thought that the design of it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I thought that the woman that played Faye was really making that her own, but at the same time capturing the spirit of that character
Mm-hmm.
in a modern way.
Yeah.
And I loved her performance. But I can definitely see why it didn't get picked up, because I had a hard time. I liked it, but I had a hard time getting into it,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't really hook me the way that I'd hoped it would.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the overall negativity seemed unproportional to me.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't bad
Right.
by any means.
Mhm.
It was and just from a design standpoint and a visual effects standpoint, it was triumphant, you know?
Definitely.
And I think that all three of the main characters, sorry, did a really good job of making those characters their own. I think that one of my problems that I had was, and it's not any knock on the actor, but I think that for Vicious,
Oh, yeah.
it's very hard and kind of uninteresting to just have your character be about being angry.
Right.
Like, if your main character trait is that you are super angry 100% of the time, that's not necessarily something that's easy to make very visual, like engaging and compelling.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that dude was a little bit hamstrung by that character trait. But I think that, like I said, I understand why it wasn't picked up. It looked very expensive, and it maybe didn't recoup it in the terms of, like, however Netflix measures, how much money they're bringing in.
Whatever the metric is.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can understand why it wasn't brought back. But yeah, I don't understand the hate. Like, they tried. Right. It wasn't as good as we'd hoped, unfortunately, but it's still for what it is, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it. So
yeah.
If you could tell your younger self, I guess maybe we're talking to Gabe when he was a senior in high school. If you could tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Well, like I said, it would definitely be that there's football at community colleges in California. That would be the one thing. And I think, honestly, not to try to sound like, I hope I don't sound like I'm pandering, but honestly, one of the things that I would say is to get into comics earlier. That there's, it would have been I was a high school senior in 2004, and there's a lot of great comic titles that had already been made and that were going to be made, and a lot of cool storylines that are happening around that time with DC and Marvel. And I think that would be something that I would say to myself,
Mm-hmm.
And it might have led to me getting into the indie comic scene earlier and starting to work on comics earlier, and seeing that as a way to, I've always been a writer. I was writing short stories when I was a little kid, and like, so it might have been a way for me to see to get as an outlet what I'm doing now. Essentially, I would have started what I'm doing now earlier,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been cool.
Right. And my last question for the Thunder Round, and hopefully it'll be a clean segue to our discussion about the problem with parallels. The main character in your newest comic book, The Problem with Parallels, likes to eat the, quote, perfect cheeseburger, end quote, made from a machine. What would be Raphael's perfect cheeseburger, and what would be yours?
Oh, man. Well, Ralph's perfect cheeseburger, I feel like would probably be very similar to mine. I think that he is the type of guy who is going to want something that's bigger, that's got a lot of the stuff on it, all the fixings on it. Not too messy, as you can kind of see in the book, as you have seen because you've read it, and readers will see when it comes out via Kickstarter. He is a little bit messy, but he doesn't want to be that way. So I don't think that he's the kind of guy who's going to want something that's super messy. But yeah, I think that he would want the lettuce, tomato, onions, pickles, all the fixings on there, a nice thick patty, and a nice not I'm totally blanking on the words, but like a really good bun. And I think that I'm kind of the same way, and not too much as far as the dressings but definitely a little bit of ketchup, not against Thousand Island from time to time, and whatever else, people can think of. I am personally not a big barbecue burger guy, but I know people love that. And I don't think that Ralph is that way either.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just heard something drop. Did your jaw drop when I said that?
No. My elbow hit the mic stand. Now, do you have you said a thick patty. Now, how do you feel about smash burgers?
I love smash burgers.
Okay.
I'm pretty not discerning when it comes to burgers, unless it's overdone, which is just just not my preference. But there is a place by me that does a Cowboy Burger, which is like a regular burger, but then with the Korean barbecue,
right.
or I think it's Korean barbecue, but the Cowboy beef
rib
on there.
Yeah, short rib.
Yeah, short rib. And that is delicious.
Wow.
That is
I'll have to try
really
that
something,
spot, man.
Yeah, it's good. And then as I said, I used to eat those cheesesteaks with the fried egg and the mozzarella sticks in there. Not opposed to that being in a burger either.
Now let's as I said, we're going to change the discussion to the problem with parallels. If you were at a comic convention promoting the problem with parallels, what would be your pitch to people that are walking by?
I would say that it is a science fiction comedy, a one-shot short story. It is about two parallel universe traveling brothers who have to resolve their differences while on the run from interdimensional assassins. And it is my homage to Futurama. As I talked about, I did a Futurama podcast, and it's one of my favorite TV shows. It's one that has defined my my personality and my sense of humor and the way that I write. And it's also an homage to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which is one of my favorite movies. And it's a movie that I didn't realize it when I saw it when I was very young, but it's the movie that made me want to be a writer, because of the way that they spoke to each other and the snappiness of it and the cleverness of it and the way that they kind of navigated the world with their wits and things like that, and the story that was told. And so it's my homage to those two things. And the art is done by Elisa Menegel, who is a absolutely spectacular, superb artist, and who elevates all of the ridiculous things that I write to levels that I didn't know even existed. They're so high up. And so even just looking at the art, you can tell how incredible of an artist she is and everything that she's done. And I'm, because of that and all of those things, I'm exceptionally proud of this comic. And I hope that people enjoy it.
How did you find your artist?
Through Upwork, the freelancing website.
Oh, okay.
So just the lucky happenstance of me looking at the right time when she was looking for work. So I'm very, very pleased that we've connected.
I love that word, happenstance. I guess going back to comic conventions, what are some strategies that you employ at cons to sort of have better engagement with attendees?
Well, it's been a while. I haven't been to one since before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I am hoping to do and will be able to do whenever I go to my next one is to have multiple books on my table. Because when I was tabling before, I'm relatively new at this. I've only been doing this for about 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had one book on my table before. I had multiple chapters of it, but it was only one book. I was only trying to sell one book. And it was kind of a hard sell for Molly. It's an action adventure story. It's the art is great, but it's very dark. It's not, light and fun. The subject matter is kind of dark. There's elements of it that are very sad and tragic, and there's explosions and some curse words and things like that. So it's not necessarily for kids. So it was a hard sell. It was hard. And so what I wanted to do was have more books, first of all, more titles, and have a couple different genres. So I've got my vampire romance, I've got my my action adventure with talking dogs, and I've got now my sci-fi comedy. So I feel like having a wide breadth of things is definitely something that I'm looking forward to doing again when I can do convention, or when I will do conventions again, because that gives people a lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's something that I'm looking forward to. Other than that, it was just a matter of, talking to people and not waiting for people to come to you, because that won't happen. And that's hard for me because I'm kind of an introverted person. It was something that I always found challenging when I was at conventions, of stopping people who were walking by and saying, "Hey, would you like to check out my comic?" and handing them a flyer. But that's what has to be done. Even if you're the type of person that is pretty quiet like me and is pretty introverted, like, if you want to sell your comic, if you want to get it into people's hands, like, you can't wait for them to come to you. You have to go out and get it.
Right.
You have to go out and grab people's attention. So, there's the way I see it, there's no other way around that besides trying to politely get their attention,
Yeah, for sure. How long were you working on this story? And was there sort of a particular event that helped direct you to this, to whatever the problem with parallels became?
Yeah. The event that precipitated the problem with parallels was the worldwide pandemic. It's a story about feeling stuck. It's a story. The main character Raphael feels like he is stuck in his own universe and wants to be in another one. He's in a situation that he doesn't like, and he finds one that is better and just drops himself in there. But which is a feeling that I had, and I'm sure a lot of people had during the beginning of the pandemic and during the lockdown here in Southern California, of just feeling stuck and wanting to get out of that situation. So that's kind of where it came from. But in the story with Raphael, he learns that there are consequences to trying to take a shortcut to whatever it is you're trying to get unstuck from. So that's where the story came from. And actually the short stories that I've written have all been written during the pandemic, most of them during the lockdown. And they're all kind of in their own way about getting unstuck, about being in a place where where the status quo is not working for you and you really want to get out of there, but you don't feel like you can. And that all of that was precipitated by the pandemic. So to answer your other question, I've been working on this for, I think I started working on this about a year ago, the problem with parallels, maybe a little bit more. And then in the later half of last year, I started to work with Elisa on the pages. So all of the pages are done, ready to print as soon as the Kickstarter is over. And yeah, so it's been a quick turnaround process for this one.
How far have you plotted out? I mean, how many issues do you envision for the problem with parallels?
It's right now just the one shot.
Uh-huh.
I don't have any plans to continue it. I know that you're probably asking that because it does have an open-ended ending. It definitely has a beginning, middle, and end of this particular story, but I do leave things open to return to whatever hijinks Raph and Sanzio and L9 get themselves into in the multiverse. But for right now, the plan is just for this one shot.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a couple of characters there. Would you like to talk about them a little more?
Sure. So the two main characters are Raphael and Sanzio. Two names that my mom during I guess it was 2020 or around the time of my birthday a couple of years ago, she shared with me the list of names that were in contention for my name. And two of them were Raphael and Sanzio. So I have put them into my comic. Yeah, they're brothers. Raphael's the older one, and he has, as I said, has dropped himself into a new parallel universe where his life is better than the one in his own. And his younger brother Sanzio was traveling with him in parallel universes before the comic begins, but they have since parted ways. And he comes looking for him because there are interdimensional assassins after Raph, because they stole the technology to travel between parallel universes from the Laverna cartel is what they're called. They're interdimensional criminals essentially. And so now there are these two assassins that are after both of them. And that's kind of what the consequences are of, that I alluded to earlier about being dropped into a parallel universe. So yeah, those are the two main characters. It is and is not based on my relationship with my brother.
I was about to ask if it was actually based on real people, and then I was
No.
gonna, and then I sort of added, and if these people are real, which parallel universe are they from?
They are and they aren't based on real people. I think that so Raph is the older brother, and he's a bit chubby. And so I feel like if I say, oh yeah, Raphael is based on my older brother, like the first thing that my brother is going to say is like, oh, why'd you make me fat in your comment? Which I'm trying to avoid. So it's not really based on him, but it is kind of based on our relationship. And the dynamic that can really only come from being brothers that are pretty close together in age and all of that stuff. But in a lot of ways, Raphael Raphael and Sanzio are both based on me. And it's all about not to give too much away about the story, but it is about the way that we see ourselves and the way that we perceive ourselves can sometimes be split. You can see yourself one way and feel that that's 100% the way that you are and the way that you are seen by other people. And you can see yourself another way and feel the exact same way, and they could be totally different. So the story is really about the perception of how we see ourselves and the two parallel versions of ourselves that can exist in the same universe, right? Mm-hmm. Where sometimes you feel like you're totally worthless and you're an imposter and you've never done anything right. And sometimes you feel like you're on top of the world and everything you touch turns to gold. And those both exist in our brains and running parallel to each other. There's parallel versions of each other, of ourselves living in our own bodies. And I'm trying to kind of, I hope that that's not too confusing to your listeners. It confuses me even when I say it, but that's something that I'm exploring in this story. And so in that way, what Raphael feels about himself and what Sanzio feels about Raphael and what Sanzio feels about himself, those are all based on different aspects of me feeling a certain way about myself. And that's kind of where that conflict and where the story that's between them comes from. But at the same time, I don't think that I'd be able to tap into what it means to be siblings, brothers with somebody who's close in your age, if I didn't have that relationship with my brother. So they are inexorably linked. So that's why I responded yes and no.
Got it. Were there any creative challenges that you had difficulty resolving? If so, what were they, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, coming up with different parallel universes for them to travel to was a bit of a challenge, because I set a rule for myself that they weren't traveling in time. So I didn't want to, because the story is so short, I didn't want to make it seem like they were traveling between parallel universes and traveling in time. So that meant that, okay, as I'm writing the script, I'm like, okay, what's the universe they're jumping to next? Oh, it's medieval and there's a bunch of knights. It's like, no, that's going to make the reader think that they're traveling through time. It's like, okay, what's another one? It's like, oh, okay, well, this one is they're all samurais and they're in feudal. It's like, no, they're not traveling through time. So that was kind of hard. Keeping everything at the same timeline was a challenge.
Got it.
Another challenge was, strangely enough, a lot of my ideas automatically went to animals. And some of it made it in there where there's a dog universe in the book. And then there's a dinosaur universe in the book. But then when I did those, I was like, okay, well in this one, there's giant cats, and I was like, no more animals. I was like, oh, well, okay, this one, there's horses and they have horses. I was like, no animals. Like I have too many animals. So those were the two main challenges that I kept gravitating to, but I kept having to challenge myself to get away from and say, like, okay, like, no, what's a different way to do a parallel universe that isn't just animals in suits or time travel? So yeah, it did come down to, for a couple of them, just kind of fun word associations. The main one that's in the comic is Donut City, so that I'm particularly proud of. And yeah, it was a fun challenge to kind of get around, and I'm very happy with the universes that I ended up with.
When you think of donut, what's the first kind of donut that pops in your head?
Definitely the cake kind. Not the raised. There's nothing wrong with the glazed raised one. They're puffy and airy, but I definitely love one that's real rich and it's heavy and it's thick. So that's the first thing that come to mind. When I think of one. But if you're asking which one do I go to first in the box, like where does my hand go? Definitely to an old fashioned.
Interesting.
So probably the normal glazed one before the chocolate, but probably both of those going into my mouth at some point.
Are there any details about the Kickstarter that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah. Just that Elisa's art is amazing. And I'll keep saying that. It'll probably not the last time that I bring that up in the podcast, but I also have my sister Izzy Cheng at Izzy Cheng Art on Instagram has done a variant cover.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about that because I know the last names were the same.
Yeah. So she's done a variant cover. It's very, very cool. Her art is amazing. So that's available on the Kickstarter as a print, or you can get a copy of the comic with that as the cover. Elisa, as I said, did the logo for Cheeseburger Night, which is how Roth gets the perfect cheeseburger every time. So those is a magnet. And then a friend of mine, Linda Chung, who is an artist that I've worked with on another comic that I did, has done postcards that are the stretch goal rewards. One of them, or both of them, feature different parallel universes in the comic. One of them I've already mentioned is Donut City, and then the other one that is also in the comic is Dinosaur Beach. And so her art for that is really incredible. So if we hit those stretch goals, people that get the print copy, that get the print comic, will be getting those postcards, and those are well worth it. She's an incredible artist. She works on an animated TV show as a background artist, so she's a real pro. And I'm so pleased with all the cool stuff that other people have created for me for this, and I think that people are going to love it.
Nice. I only know surface level information about NFTs and cryptocurrency, but Kickstarter has sort of been trending lately, especially since C. Spike Trotman, someone that has successfully crowdfunded over 30 projects and raised over $2.5 million on Kickstarter, deciding not to use Kickstarter anymore over concerns of not having adequate info on how blockchain technology will fit into Kickstarter's future plans. And I know there's some other environmental concerns, but do you have a take on this situation?
This is so my brother is in tech, so I've had a conversation with him about it based on kind of his expertise. I really don't know enough to talk about it, to be completely honest. Yeah. It's kind of something that I'm kind of wait and see what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think really anybody knows what's going to happen. And from what it kind of sounds like, if Kickstarter knows what's going to happen, they're not being very transparent with it. I'm not sure how they're going to be using blockchain, or at least that hasn't been made completely clear to the layman, which I feel like I represent. So I'm kind of in a wait and see. I think for right now, I definitely understand the concerns of blockchain and cryptocurrency. It's not something that I use. I haven't made any NFTs because of the reasons that you kind of listed. So I'm in a holding pattern, and I'm going to see what Kickstarter does, and I'm going to see what other people do. And but for right now, I made a plan to do these comics on Kickstarter, and I'm a stick to the plan type of guy. and so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I was just wondering.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely a concern, and it's definitely something that I've talked to people about, and I wish I knew more about it. But it's still something that I'm just waiting to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Before we move on to superhero shoutouts, is there anything else that you'd like to add concerning the problem with parallels and the Kickstarter campaign?
I would say that I would say that I'm very just once again that what Elisa has done with his art is just incredible, and she did the lines and colors for it, and it's just amazing. And so if you are at all interested, and go to the Kickstarter and see the first 3 pages of the comic, and see her cover and see what she's done with that, I want to assure you that her art only gets better in the final 10 pages after the first 3 pages. It's just amazing, and I'm so excited to bring it to people.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a fun, like it definitely adds to the frenetic pace of the chase. It sort of it goes hand in hand with the action.
Yeah, she draws action and facial expressions so well.
Facial expression.
Yeah. So the urgency of the story just comes out in the simplicity of their eyes and their mouths, and it's so great.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot going on, but at the same time, there's enough contrast with the elements in the background that your attention is still controlled and it goes a certain direction.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
It just reminded me. Have you been watching Peacemaker?
I have.
Okay, and I know they make reference to Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, so I was going to ask you about that.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I was. I love that vigilante character. I think that a funny psychopath is so. It's just done so well. I love that character. But yeah, the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid thing definitely made me laugh.
All right, superhero shoutouts. Is there a person or group of people that has helped you along the way that you'd like to say thank you to?
I've told them the last time I was on their podcasts and when I see them in public, but I would like to shout out Barbara and Bryant Dillon, again, of Fan-Based Press. And the reason why is because I was reading this week and why it's kind of top of mind to me. I was reading, finally got around to the Good Asian trade paperback.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through, I read it on Hoopla, so I was just going through the first couple of pages and reading all of the pull quotes from the reviewers. And the last one on the page is a pull quote from Fan-Based Press, and a review written by yours truly. It was I wrote the review for Fan-Based Press for the Good Asian #1, and it ended up in the very first pages of the trade paperback, which is an incredible feeling. My name's not there, which is fine, but I know it, and so I'm very, very grateful to them for giving me the opportunity to write for their website and to review that book and all the other books that I've reviewed, although it's been a while, and to be on their podcast and everything that they've done for me. So I'd say that, for anybody that hasn't checked out, that listens to your podcast, that hasn't checked out Fan-Based Press, the website, their reviews, or any of their books, I definitely say to check it out. But also, as part of the digital rewards in my Kickstarter, The Problem with Parallels, there is one of the Fan-Based Press books, The Margins, which Barbara and Bryant have generously given up to me as part of the digital bundle. That's one of the rewards, the backer rewards. So that can be checked out at Kickstarter, and is also another reason why I should thank Barbara and Bryant. And yeah.
Yeah, they rock.
Yeah,
they're so awesome. You mentioned your artist earlier, but is there another artist or writer or other creative that you'd like our audience to check out?
Yeah. I would say my sister, Izzy Cheng, at Izzy Cheng Art, IZZYCHENGART, on Instagram. Definitely check her out. And Ben Sawyer, who is the artist for Molly, who has been a great collaborator. Despite the fact that For Molly is over, we're still figuring out what our next project is going to be. He's great to work with, and I'm looking forward to working with him in the future. So sketchsawyer.com and at sketchsawyer on Instagram and Twitter, and I believe Facebook, but I deactivated my Facebook, so I'm not 100% on his handle.
Okay.
But yeah, check out his website. All of his information.
You don't want to be part of the meta universe?
I'm still on Instagram, so I still am, but yeah, Facebook, it's not for me anymore.
Right. Okay. Are there any other projects that you'd like to promote? What other projects have you been involved with that you'd like our audience to know about?
Well, definitely go and check out Another Lousy Millennium podcast, where my brother and I summarize, analyze, and discuss every episode and movie of Futurama. And then patiently wait for the show to come back, as I will be as well, which is planned for 2023. And yeah, that's pretty much what I got going on, and the Kickstarter, of course.
And we'll have links to all your social media and your website, GabeChengComics.com. Where's the best place for people to connect and follow with you?
Instagram and Twitter.
Okay.
So at Gabe Cheng Comics on both of them.
Cool. And before we close out the show, I like to sort of ask my guests for some sort of closing piece or pieces of advice. And I think for this episode, I sort of want to focus in on writer's block. Sometimes ideas just don't seem to flow, and you're sort of just staring at a blank page for a long time.
Yeah.
As a writer, how do you combat that?
There's a couple of things. Definitely relying on the structure, relying on the story circle. What needs to happen? What do you know you want? Okay, you have a big set piece that you want to get to. You have a big confrontation that you want to get to. You have two characters that you want to kiss. Anything like that, and then work your way backwards using the structure. How do I get there? As a teacher, backwards planning was an important tool that I would use when I was planning lessons, where it's like, okay, what do I want the students to be able to do at the end? And then what are the steps I need to take in order to get them there from zero, or from wherever we left off at the last project. So figuring out what you want of the story, in a story that is about parallel universes, how do we get to them traveling to parallel universes? How do we get them running through different parallel universes? What needs to happen in order to get there? And then once we get there, what do we do in order to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting on page 8, on page 9, and how do we change the story in Act 3 so that it's still about parallel universes, but it's not just continuously doing the same thing for 10 pages. So taking those pieces, looking at the structure, how do you get there? And the other thing that I always tell myself when I get stuck is, do I need to blow this up and start over? If something is not working, if I'm plugging away at the lines, and writing a conversation and it ends up being 4 pages of nothing, sometimes the best thing to do is just blow it all up and start over, and put them in a different location. Have one of them tied up, have one of them get shot and they're bleeding out and time is running out to get them to the hospital. Have one of them, their cell phone is ringing and they have to get back to work, or whatever it is. Like, change something up. I try to think of it as kind of a Rubik's cube, where you're looking at the different sides and feeling out, if I move this here and I slide this there, then what does it change for the previous scene and the subsequent scene? But how does it make this current scene work better? Don't be afraid to change things. Don't be afraid to blow things up. Because sometimes that's been the best way for me to get out of things. And that has been true, not just for the problem of parallels, but for practically everything that I have planned for my next couple of comic projects.
That seems like good advice, not only for writing, but for life.
It's true. If something is not working, if you feel like, that, if you feel like whatever you're doing is just throwing rocks down a hole, waiting for it to fill, then, sometimes you got to find a way to do something different,
Yeah. Gabe, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been awesome having you back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. And thank you for having me. And I'm always happy to be on here.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for listening to the Holly Show podcast, and thanks to my guest, Gabe Cheng. Please give him a follow and consider supporting his newest comic book, The Problem with Parallels, which is available now on Kickstarter until Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. Even just sharing the Kickstarter link on social media helps a ton, so please support any way you can. As you know, we love putting the spotlight on independent pop culture creators like Gabe. If you have a suggestion for a potential guest, please let us know by reaching out to us on social media or by filling out our contact form on our website, hall-h.com. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would appreciate a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on Apple Podcasts. And please spread the word on social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and stay safe out there.